October 16th, 2025. Gulf of Aden, 3:42 a.m. 30 speedboats armed with RPGs and heavy machine guns emerge from the Somali coast, racing toward USNS Guadalupe, an American oiler carrying 8 million gallons of jet fuel. USS Laboon's radar screens light up red. The destroyer has minutes to stop an assault that could turn the tanker into a fireball visible from space. But Captain Michael Harris faces an impossible equation. His ship is running low on ammunition, the enemy keeps coming in waves, and defensive fire alone won't end this. The decision he makes in the next 60 seconds will violate every rule of engagement written since World War II. He won't just defend the tanker. He'll authorize a direct strike on enemy territory, a pirate stronghold 200 miles inside Somalia that intelligence said was untouchable. 4 hours, 3 combat domains, 1 doctrine that will change naval warfare forever. This is Operation Iron Dagger. At 3:42 a.m. on October 16th, 2025, in the Gulf of Aden, one of the planet's most vital maritime choke points where 30% of global containerized cargo transits annually, the officers on watch inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Laboon were staring at radar screens with mounting dread. The atmosphere was electric with tension, thick as steel cable ready to snap. Suddenly, a small contact appeared on the Aden Spy 1D radar display. Then another. Within moments, dozens of bright red contacts materialized, moving at extraordinary speeds, nothing like any fishing vessel ever recorded. They were racing directly toward the target the destroyer had been assigned to protect, USNS Guadalupe, an oiler carrying more than 8 million gallons of jet fuel for the U.S. Fifth Fleet. Red alert klaxons shattered the silence. The CIC blazed with crimson warning lights. Gun crews sprinted to battle stations. From the dark waters beyond, the first sounds of the storm rose. The guttural roar of 30 high-powered outboard engines tearing through the night across Black Ocean. Armed speedboats surged forward like spears launched at the hull of a giant. The first rocket streaked across the darkness. Fire flashed. The sound of steel being torn apart echoed horrifically. Flames erupted at Guadalupe's stern quarter. In that instant, the battle for survival began. But how did a naval superpower find itself pushed into such a desperate confrontation? And what triggered the U.S. Navy to unleash a counterstrike unlike anything seen in modern maritime warfare? From the bridge of USS Laboon, firelight reflected off the black water like molten steel. The SPY-1D Aegis radar system displayed wave after wave of hostile contacts. All were closing at speeds exceeding 40 knots. Each red dot represented an armed speedboat that had been modified with heavy machine guns and RPG launchers. These weren't simple pirates. This was an organized paramilitary force. From the Combat Information Center, a decisive voice rang out, "Targets confirmed, all weapons systems, to battle stations. Prepare to engage." The Laboon's 3 MiG-45 5-inch guns roared to life simultaneously. Each 70-pound shell left the barrel at supersonic velocity, tearing through the night air, creating massive geysers of water across the ocean. One enemy boat took a direct hit and vanished completely after a single catastrophic explosion. From the south, the guided missile cruiser USS St. George entered the fight. Its twin heavy guns fired in rotation, weaving a dense wall of fire that blocked the enemy's advance. The ocean surface blazed with each flashing salvo. Inside the hull compartments, warning klaxons blared continuously. The Aegis combat system linked both ships through SIPRNet, updating enemy positions in real time. But Kalada, the ghost of Somalia, was no amateur. He directed his entire formation through encrypted radio communications, splitting his forces into 3 prongs, one to intercept, one as a feint, and one for direct assault. His non-linear swarm tactics temporarily overloaded American radar systems, creating fatal gaps in coverage. The small boats scattered, changing direction constantly, using white smoke and flares to blind the laboon's electro-optical targeting systems. Several boats penetrated the first defensive line, entering within 2 kilometers, where the main guns lost effectiveness. "Bridge, this is weapons. Multiple contacts inside the gun envelope. Request permission to activate CIWS. CIWS authorized. Engage all hostile contacts." Immediately, both phalanx close-in weapon systems roared to life. The sound of the 20mm Gatling cannons was like fabric being torn, 6,000 rounds per minute spewing forth. Red tracer streams cut across the ocean surface, shredding the unlucky boats to pieces. But the pressure didn't ease. Several enemy boats had penetrated the final defensive layer, closing on the USNS Guadalupe. On the oiler's aft deck, sailors and civilian mariners gripped 50-caliber machine guns, returning fire amid the blazing chaos. They weren't fighting to kill, they were fighting to survive. Every bullet fired carried the terror that a single RPG hitting the fuel tanks would turn the entire ship into a timed bomb. One suicide boat charged directly at Guadalupe's starboard side, grappling hooks catching the deck edge. The sound of steel-on-steel impact rang out harshly. American sailors reacted instantly, concentrating fire to eliminate the entire boarding party. Fire and smoke engulfed the water zone, but more boats kept coming. In the command center, Captain Michael Harris understood they were losing the initiative. Despite destroying over 12 boats in the first 18 minutes, the enemy's attack tempo was still increasing. The Aegis system warned that main gun ammunition was running critically low, barrel temperatures exceeding safety limits. Over internal comms, the radar officer's voice crackled. "Sir, if we maintain this rate of fire, we'll be Winchester in 4 minutes." Harris gripped his helmet strap, his eyes cold as steel. "Those 4 minutes, we hold the defensive line. Not one boat gets near Guadalupe." Sailors shouted orders down the length of the ship. Oil smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal hung thick in the air. Across the ocean, muzzle flashes from guns, the whistle of rockets, and the roar of engines merged into a symphony of chaos. One boat hit by gunfire exploded just dozens of meters off the beam. The shockwave rocked the entire destroyer, throwing several crew members to the deck. On the main deck, fire erupted from a secondary fuel compartment. The damage control team rushed forward, fighting the flames while dodging flying metal shrapnel. In the bridge, Harris watched the radar display. The red contacts were decreasing, but not enough. The electronic warfare system detected strange signals. The remaining enemy boats were converging from another direction. They were attempting to cut off the American ship's escape route. He realized the terrifying truth. They were winning individual engagements but risking the entire battle. Pure defense couldn't end this war. When the enemy controlled the tempo, every response was reactive. If they didn't change strategy, just one boat breaking through would turn the entire shipping lane into hell. Inside the Combat Information Center of USS Laboon, red warning lights continued pulsing. Outside, the Gulf of Aden churned with gunfire and flames. The radar display showed dozens of hostile signals still maneuvering. Though many boats had been eliminated, those remaining kept charging forward as if death meant nothing. Captain Michael Harris stood before the tactical display, his gaze cold and deep as tempered steel. He understood that if they only defended, ammunition would run dry and the enemy would win through sheer fanaticism. Harris leaned over the secure communications console, typing a command that transmitted code Charlie 0 Foxtrot 4, a request for ISR and long-range strike capability, priority urgent. The encrypted order transmitted directly to U.S. Central Command Headquarters. At the Pentagon, the signal appeared within 30 seconds. The chain reaction began. A female engineer's voice confirmed over encrypted channels. "Eye of God is open. 9 Reapers ready. Request operational area designation." Harris replied tersely. Find where they're coming from. I need the source. At 12,000 feet above the Somali coastline, an MQ-9 Reaper drone changed course. Its infrared sensor suite swept every meter of shoreline. Under the night sky, the land appeared in shades of gray. Small settlements, dirt roads, occasional flashes from gasoline engines. Data continuously streamed back to USS Laboon via secure satellite data link. On the central display, infrared signatures moved in formation toward a coastal town named Barawe. The AI system automatically flagged anomalies, high heat signatures, strong radio signals, numerous small boats concentrated in concealed warehouses. An intelligence officer whispered, "That's the nest. That's where they're launching the attack boats from." The Reaper's electro-optical camera zoomed in. Through the lens, dozens of rusty corrugated roofs appeared, but behind them, fuel storage and weapons caches poorly camouflaged came into clear view. A makeshift radar was operating alongside a homemade mobile communication system. Everything confirmed this wasn't a fishing village. This was a complete operational base. Harris clenched the railing, his voice dropping low. "Barawe, so that's where you are, Khalida." The report went up immediately. Within 12 minutes, the Pentagon convened an emergency session. A decision with political ramifications was made. Authorization granted for preemptive strike. The phrase in the document was preemptive limited strike, Somalia coastline. This was a moment that shattered conventional rules of engagement. The U.S. Navy had never launched an active offensive strike into ungoverned African territory without UN coordination. But facing reality, a massive logistics vessel under threat, an entire shipping lane being blockaded, they had no choice. Harris received confirmation from the highest levels, full operational authority. Transition to counteroffensive posture. He took a deep breath, turning to the combat officer. Launch Operation Iron Dagger. Target Barawe. Call in the specialists. Call Apache. Call everything that can fly. The command center blazed with activity. Control panels updated continuously. Laboon and St. George switched to command node status, becoming the coordination center for Operation Iron Dagger, the steel blade. In the sky, the Reaper continued surveillance. At sea, 2 U.S. destroyers began repositioning, herding remaining enemy boats into a narrow kill zone, blocking their retreat to Barawe. Over tactical communications, a new signal appeared. Apache AH-64 gunship squadron launching from Djibouti airfield, armed with Hellfire missiles. Minutes later, 2 MH-47 Chinooks lifted off carrying SEAL Team 6, the most elite unit in the U.S. Navy. From that moment, the battle was no longer just defense. It was a joint, multi-domain offensive operation. Air, sea, land, data. Every element connected into a unified network through Aegis and Cybernet. On the deck of USS Laboon, Harris looked skyward where a small bright dot moved, the MQ-9 Reaper. Below, ocean waves reflected the glow of burning wreckage. He knew the decisive moment had arrived. "From now on," he said quietly, "we're not the target, we're the hunters." Dawn hadn't yet broken. On the eastern horizon, a thin streak of light cut through darkness like a knife blade. At that precise moment, 2 MH-47 Chinooks flew low over the water, running dark with no navigation lights. Behind them, a pair of Apache AH-64s flew escort formation. Rotor wash pressed the waves down like a cleaver. Inside the Chinook's cargo bay, SEAL Team 6 checked weapons, M4A1 carbines with suppressors, C4 explosive charges, night vision goggles, laser designators. Every face was stone calm. 10 nautical miles offshore from Barawe, Harris gave the order. Operation Iron Dagger commences. Authorization to engage. From above, the Reaper swept the approach route. Terrain data, wind direction, enemy gun positions were transmitted simultaneously to every device on the helicopters. Displays glowed bright. a living map moving in real time. The two Chinooks accelerated. At 300 meters from shore, they suddenly pulled up sharply, then dropped to just 10 meters above ground level. Side doors opened. Fast ropes deployed. Dark figures dropped in combat positions. Baraway's beach shook from rotor downwash. The moment boots hit sand, the SEALs spread into triangle formation. Alpha Team headed for a 2-story building where intelligence indicated hostages. Bravo Team carried explosives, advancing on the fuel and weapons depot. All movement occurred in absolute silence. From above, an enemy heavy machine gun nest detected movement and opened fire from a rooftop. Tracer rounds screamed past the SEALs' heads, but before the second round could be fired, the 30mm chain gun under the Apache's nose swiveled. A burst of steel rain. 10 explosive rounds detonated. The roof collapsed. The gun position ceased to exist. Target Alpha, secure. Continue advance. As Bravo Team approached the depot, pirates poured from buildings, firing wildly with AK-47s and RPGs. Bullets sparked off concrete walls. SEALs responded with precise, controlled fire. Single shots, single targets. Through night vision, they moved like ghosts. One SEAL threw a flashbang grenade. A blinding flash erupted, then silence. Bravo Team placed C4 charges along fuel drums and ammunition crates. Detonation circuits connected. Timer set, 10 minutes. Explosives armed. Exfiltrate the area. Meanwhile, Alpha Team breached the 2-story building. 3 American hostages held in the basement. They were freed in under 2 minutes. One SEAL took minor wounds, but the team maintained formation. West of Baraway, a pirate force of over 20 fighters assembled, RPGs and technical vehicles with mounted machine guns preparing to counterattack. From 400 meters altitude, the Apache locked targets. 2 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles launched, streaking downward faster than Mach 1. A massive explosion. Metal fragments and sand sprayed everywhere. The entire convoy was flattened in seconds. Counterattack neutralized, continuing ground support. 5 minutes later, when all SEAL teams withdrew to the beach, the detonation order was confirmed. A chain of flashes erupted. The first explosion sounded like thunder, then a second shockwave 10 times more powerful blew through the entire town of Baraway. Fire erupted dozens of meters high. Fuel drums detonated in sequence, consuming the entire base complex. A massive smoke column rose, reflected in the eyes of sailors aboard USS Laboon. Mission complete. Enemy logistics. Backbone destroyed. Offshore, Khalida, the ghost of Somalia, watched through binoculars. He witnessed his base consumed by flames. His face remained stone cold, but his hands trembled slightly. In desperation, he shouted orders to gather 10 remaining boats for a suicide assault on USS Laboon. The boats surged forward, engines screaming, creating light streaks across the ocean. On the destroyer, Harris gave a terse command. All weapon systems engage. The 127mm guns roared. CIWS rotated, spewing red tracer chains. The sea exploded. One boat hit directly, disintegrated. The second caught fire. Only Khalida's command boat kept coming. He stood at the bow, gripping a gold-plated AK, firing wildly, screaming in madness. Aboard an Apache, a SEAL sniper looked through thermal imaging. Khalida's figure appeared clear as a moving flame against the ocean. Target locked. One shot. Khalida collapsed. The command boat exploded. In USS Laboon's CIC, Harris exhaled slowly. Enemy commander eliminated. Over the Gulf of Aden, waves subsided. The first rays of dawn cut through the smoke. The American flag flew proudly from the mast. The Barawe counterstrike was complete. At 7:00 a.m., the sun rose over the Aden horizon. At sea, smoke still drifted from burning boat wreckage. Waves had calmed, leaving only debris floating on the water. USNS Guadalupe remained intact despite scorched hull plating. The American flag, torn at one corner, still flew defiantly. Barawe, the most notorious pirate stronghold in Somalia, had been erased from the map. The base, weapons depot, and communications network had vanished in a sea of fire. All hostages rescued safely. Not a single round fell on civilians. Operation Iron Dagger completed in just 4 hours, from detection through counterstrike to total target elimination. On USS Laboon's bridge, Captain Michael Harris stood silently gazing seaward. The ocean before him was no longer a battlefield, but an expensive lesson in proactive strategic power. Victory didn't come from the most firepower, but from knowing when to strike. That same day, a special report reached the Pentagon. Strategic commanders called it Barawe Doctrine, a new operational model for the 21st century, where power doesn't lie in fleet size, but in the ability to instantly coordinate across multiple combat domains. U.S. Department of Defense analysis identified 3 core principles. 1. Seize initiative. Don't wait for the enemy to strike. Identify threats early. Attack coordination centers before they can reorganize. Barawe showed that solid defense isn't enough. You must control tempo. 2. Multi-domain integration. Victory at Barawe wasn't the Navy's alone, nor the Air Force's, nor Special Operations. It was the harmonization of all, from Reaper UAV data, Apache precision fires, to SEAL mobility and absolute discipline. Aegis and Cybernet technology transformed sea, air, and land into a unified battle space. 3. Transform technology into absolute advantage. In a world where enemies can be any organization anywhere, information and decision speed are the most powerful weapons. The Reaper wasn't just a UAV, it was the Eye of God, artificial intelligence processing battlefield chaos into actionable maps. After the operation, effects rippled globally. Maritime routes through the Gulf of Aden reopened. Marine insurance premiums dropped 43% in 2 weeks. Regional nations sent thanks to the United States. International press called it the most strategically precise, lowest casualty, anti-piracy punitive strike in history. From that point forward, military operations in the Middle East, Africa, and even the Pacific used Barawe as a template. When attacked is, don't defend too long. When the enemy controls tempo, strike where they don't expect. When information dominates, speed becomes the weapon. Finally, when the operation concluded, a message transmitted across all U.S. military communications networks. Iron Dagger isn't just an operation. It's an affirmation that initiative is strength, coordination is victory, and discipline is the foundation of all glory. The American flag flew in the sunlight. The Gulf of Aden lay flat and calm, as if no storm had ever occurred. In the command center, Harris looked up at the radar. No more red contacts remained. War had ended, but vigilance must continue. The Barawe campaign became a symbol for the 21st century, where technology, strategy, and human will merge into one. It proved that in an era of non-state threats, proactive thinking is the most powerful weapon. Operation Iron Dagger redefined modern naval warfare doctrine. It demonstrated that in the age of drones, precision strikes, and networked combat systems, the line between defense and offense has dissolved. What matters is initiative, coordination, and the will to strike decisively when Americans are threatened. The lesson from Barawe echoed across every naval command worldwide. Hesitation invites disaster. but decisive action, backed by overwhelming technological superiority, guarantees victory. Subscribe to see more real combat stories where technology and courage meet on the modern battlefield. Modern battlefield. Modern battlefield. Modern battlefield.